Hi kids, welcome back to Spelling with Dark Souls Models. Today we're going to be looking at music and spelling in music. And we're going to be spelling one of the most famous artists in the hip-hop genre, Notorious B.I.G. So, can anyone tell me how to spell B.I.G.? Great job! Now, let's move on to the bigger and slightly harder word, notorious. Can you spell notorious? Great job! Now let's put those two together, shall we? Notorious... Wait. I thought we were doing Notorious B.I.G.
No, we're doing Big Artorias.
Oh, Big Artorias. Ah, shit.
And engage in jolly cooperation.
Today I am taking on my big box of shame and all of the unpainted stuff that I've printed and left in that box to wither away whilst I just distracted myself and moved on printing a whole bunch of new stuff. But I think today's the day I'm going to go back to this box and I'm going to start working through some of the older projects that I put to one side, and I'm going to be starting off by painting this very large print that I have of Artorias. And even to date, I've been procrastinating. I've not wanted to start this. I've left it hours later during the day than I usually start. I, like probably many of you, have built up a large box of shame of things that never get painted and finished. So we're going to tackle it and we're going to get this guy done. So first things first, I'm going to start piecing parts of this together. Not all of it, but most of it, so that I can take it outside and get it primed. Right, there he is. Well, the top half of him anyway, primed up. What I want to do is I'm going to zenithal highlight his cape. We can use some nice contrasts on the cape to make it look pretty cool. In my airbrush, I'm going to load up some of my Liquitex white ink. So a top-down angle, I'm just going to generate the highlights from above, going down, focusing more concentration towards the top. Now that we've got our highlighted boy, I'm going to move on and I'm going to apply some Leviathan blue. This will be our first main colour of the cloak. I'm going to go back and add some more white ink over it. I'm going to have it nice and thin down in the airbrush. So over that white highlight we've done, I'm going to apply a layer of Talisar blue, nicely thinned down in the airbrush with some thinner. There we go with that extra blue on top. Getting that cool Talisar blue light from the top all the way down into the Leviathan blue. Yeah, that's pretty good for the cloak so far. Now what I'm going to do with the armor is I'm just going to dry brush it on, try some sort of TMM techniques. Grabbing my dry brush, just going to do a very, very dry, thin layer of Iron Warriors. Now this guy has been sat in my box of shame for, I want to say, a good 2 months. It's always the same whenever I start a new big project. I always get a little overwhelmed, especially when it's a model of this scale. I always kind of have like a little momentary panic about starting it, and I'll be like, oh well, I'll just print off loads of other things and start loads of smaller projects and I'll come back to this one at some point, and then I never come back to this one at some point. I'll make up any excuse not to do it. Not every day is going to be one of those ones where you just wake up and go, oh, I'm going to take on that massive project I've been putting off for so long. It often is the case where you'll put off and you'll procrastinate, and then you'll feel really guilty about not doing it. And I've kind of got to a point at times while doing this channel where I'm like, oh, I need to make sure I get the best things done every week, so I've always got the best thing to share with the people that watch these videos. And then when it comes to a day like today, where you're like, yes, I want to take that on. I want to make that look cool, and I want to finish that project. You'll enjoy it, and you'll make it the best that it can be. What I'll do is I'll go over that with some Nuln Oil to sort of bring down some tones so it can sort of seep into the little recesses, and then we'll go back over it with some Iron Warriors. Super duper, and with the Nuln Oil dried, I can move on to the armor with some Iron Warriors again, just getting that color back in a bit before we move on to adding in our brighter highlights. So I'm going to take some Ironbreaker, and with this I'm going to just start bringing in some highlights sort of on the top areas, places that will be the brightest from the light source. One thing I will say with the procrastination front is, and it's the same with all things like going to the gym or learning a new skill, it's so much easier to just not do it. But the thing that makes the difference is committing to showing up for yourself. I think that's a really powerful thing. Even if it is something as small as painting that one model that's been sat at the back of your pile, or trying out that new technique that you learned. Whenever I see a new technique, I'm always pretty eager to try it out, but then I get a bit reserved when I come to filming a model because I'm like, oh, well, it's not going to be perfect, and people will see and people will judge what I do, so I need to make it perfect for every video. Every model needs to be perfect, and that's just not true. So, you know, for instance, when I painted Yhorm, that was the first time I'd ever used an airbrush, and I bought a really cheap £30 one because I was like, oh, I really want to try out some sort of fiery glow effects for his embers on his arms. Again, with the airbrush, I was like, oh, I'm scared if it doesn't work, it's not going to look good, and I'm just going to feel like a bit of a failure. And that's what is the whole point of this channel, is that I started it to sort of show my learning and my process as I do things, and I'm trying to slowly gather knowledge and experience in doing it, rather than just giving you the final finished professional product. I'm just walking you through what I do as I do it. What I will do now is I'm going to go over this with a bit of black wash and just start bringing in some shadows into some darker areas where we've lost some contrast due to dry brushing on all these different layers. So just with this black wash, just going to go into all my little recessy areas where shadows are most prevalent and just boost them up a bit. So we have our lovely armour here, gorgeous. So what I shall do, I'm going to take my Runefang steel and I'm going to start edge highlighting on some of these brighter metallic tones. Very cool. There we are with our edge highlights done. So what I'll do is I'm going to do that again, but I'm going to do it with some white. And with the white, I'm just going to accentuate just the brightest points. Otherwise, we're going to lose a fair bit of our metallic shimmer. There we go with that added in whites. It's quite subtle, but it's really added in a bit of sharpness to certain areas, especially like down that front of the leg there. You can see we've got a nice sort of sharp highlight running down. I'm going to add in a little bit of glazing. I'm going to try and use some contrast paints, take them down to a glaze with some contrast medium, and kind of see if we can generate some very faint washes to make it look a bit rusty and a bit cool. So it's quite subtle, but we're adding those tones in, sort of browny oranges to the sides. The base was a simple mix of coating with some grey and then adding in some brown and green washes over the top, all finished off with a nice black wash to tie it all together, and then just dry brushing on some highlights. Then came the sword. Now I tried this sword in so many different ways, again and again and again and again. I tried NMM, I tried TMM, I tried blending with an airbrush, blending with a paintbrush, dry brushing with metallics, and I just couldn't get it right. And after a few revisions, I kind of just settled with what I had and called it a day, and I glued the sword to the body, which was a big mistake, and recorded an outro for the episode when I thought I was kind of happy with the sword. The sword, I think, has turned out okay. It's not exactly how I envisioned it, but, you know, it's not too bad. I'm kind of happy with it. I wasn't. So when I woke up the next morning, I kind of stared at it for a while and decided that I just had to give it another go. This time I used masking tape to mask off half the sword and went back to using an airbrush to prime it blue and then add lighter blues and whites to generate light reflections and then do the opposite on the opposing sides. And that was the technique that left me happiest with the outcome. And I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I didn't just walk away with a model that I wasn't fully satisfied with, and then I could record an outro that I was a lot happier with. Well, there we are, folks. A fair few revisions of the sword later, and I'm finally happy with how it's come out. So, to give you a little lovely spin reveal, there is our big boy, Artorias. Finally done. I can finally put that to rest. We've tackled the box of shame. We've got our big boy done, and hopefully that'll spur you on to have a look at your big box of shame, and hopefully take on one of those projects you've been procrastinating and putting off for some time. Saying that, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy today's episode, or you liked something, or you learned something, drop us a comment, leave this video a like. So thank you so much. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you all next week.